Hey everybody, this is a short bonus episode for you. I've been getting a lot of emails with different questions about different topics, and I thought it would be great to bring on some really great worship leaders, friends of mine who have a lot of wisdom and insight and can help answer some of these questions. So from now on, maybe once a month, I'll do a bonus episode where I answer a listener's question. And if you want to email me a question, you can do that, alex@worshipleadertraining.com. Or if you want us to feature your voice on our podcast, you can even call in and leave a voicemail. It's 831-607-WLT1, 831-607-WLT1. And both of those links will be in the show notes. But yeah, contact me in the future if you have a question you want us to answer on the episode, and we'll bring on some qualified guests to answer those questions. So I do have two qualified guests here. I have Sam Kisaka and Brenton Collier. Hello, guys.
Hey.
Hello.
Sam is a worship leader at Hope Chapel in Hermosa Beach, and Brenton is a worship pastor in Monterey, California at Calvary Monterey, and they're both awesome guys. So I want to read this question from one of our listeners. This is a question from Rick Flood. Rick, thanks for writing this question to us. The question is this: I have always led worship with an acoustic guitar, but recently I switched to leading with an electric. This has been a huge learning curve for me. Any pointers on best practices for this? Even pedal suggestions, chord phrasing, etc. Our band setup has an electric lead player, and I am trying to figure out how to blend the two effectively. I'm sticking to light rhythm, leaving the leads to the other player. Also, any pointers for my sound guys who are running sound? Thank you for any pointers you have. So, let's just jump right in, guys. Rick is switching from an acoustic to an electric guitar for leading, and he's looking for help. What would you guys say?
Yeah, I'd say, the first step, if similarly to if you're leading from an acoustic guitar, if you're leading from an electric guitar, it's pretty simple. Just work on getting good as an electric guitar player. That's where it's got to start. There are a lot of different, techniques and ideas that'll be helpful that we'll probably get into. But I think big picture wise, if you're not a strong electric guitar player just to begin with, then you're definitely not going to be a strong leader leading from the electric guitar. So that doesn't mean you have to be the most extravagant electric guitar player, the most advanced, the most intricate. But it just means whatever you're trying to accomplish on that instrument, make sure that you've got it, you're comfortable with it, you can play it easily and effortlessly and confidently, and then add singing on top of that, but it's got to start there, just developing as an electric guitar player first before choosing to lead from electric, I think.
Mm-hmm. Sam, any thoughts?
One thing that popped into my head as you were talking, Brenton, was when you start playing electric, switching from acoustic, at least in my case, when I first started playing electric and singing at the same time, I would be thinking about the note that I was playing on electric, and so sometimes that would affect my voice. And so I definitely think, and I agree with you, that confidence is a huge thing that, you should definitely be confident on electric guitar before you start leading with it, because otherwise it just becomes a distraction.
Yeah, cool. Confidence, comfortableness, if that's a word. So maybe let's talk a little bit about tone. He asked about tone. So I lead from electric maybe once a month. Otherwise, I'm on the acoustic. And for me personally, I'm not an insanely great electric guitar player. I can, fool most people. But for tone, I don't want to mess with all these different pedals while I'm leading. So I kind of just set my guitar right between clean and overdriven. And so that way, if I play lightly and finger pick, it's clean. And if I dig into it a little harder with my pick, it adds a bit of dirt to the tone. But I'm not constantly stepping on pedals while I'm trying to lead to try to change the tone between verses and choruses. How about you guys? Any thoughts on tone?
Yeah, so I think there's two types of electric guitar worship leaders. There's the one we would be talking about here, which is more of the rhythm electric player. And then there's if you only have one electric, say, and you have to do the leads as well as the stuff, that's the only time that I would say stepping on pedals is a necessity. But other than that, I think that you're plenty safe for the light drive. When you finger pick, it'll be clean, and then you dig in, it dirties up a little bit. So
yeah, it's pretty crazy, what you can accomplish just with, like you were saying, Alex, the feel of your fingers versus your pick. What you do with your tone knobs, what you do with your volume knob, what you do with which pickup you're on. There's so much ability to shape the tone, just like right there at your fingertips without feeling like you have to have a ton of pedals. And so I've actually simplified my electric rig quite a bit through the years. And I've got all kinds of pedals, a pedal for just about everything that I've used through the years. And sometimes I'll pull something off and put one of those on for like a song that really needs it. But yeah, my basic rig is, probably the same stuff most people have: some drive, some reverb, some delay, and tuner, volume pedal, that sort of thing. And I try to just keep it really simple and work on those effects ahead of time and figure out what I need for the set, and then just try not to just be hitting all kinds of different things, because that really is difficult to do. Like if you do have to change settings quite a lot from song to song, even practice, like in addition to practicing your part, practice that sequence of changes on your pedal board and memorize it, and then make sure you can do it quickly, because you also don't want to get caught saying, okay, I need to turn off my overdrive and switch to this longer delay and go from a light reverb to a saturated reverb. And then when it comes down to the moment, you hit the wrong thing, or it ends up being this long, awkward pause because you forget. So it's almost like that's just another part that you need to practice and get comfortable with. But start simple, don't bite off more than you can chew.
Yeah. I think for me, again, like I'm not a crazy, amazing electric player, but I'll usually just have some reverb from the amp, and then I'll use a little bit of delay. Like I'll use like a short slapback delay for the upbeat songs, and then I'll just make it really simple to switch to a slightly longer like quarter note delay for the slower songs. And it's like literally one button press for me, because I don't want to have to think about like, oh, I gotta, and even if the tap tempo is not like exactly right on, like if I have a moment to tap it in correctly, I will. But if it's like we're jumping right into the next song, like no one's going to notice if my quarter note delay is like slightly off. It's more about the texture. So yeah, I think you're right on, Brenton. For rhythm, just keep it simple. I think I heard like Chris Kilala talk about his pedal rig, and he's like, I just have drive and delay and that's it, so even though it's fun to buy a bunch of pedals, if you're doing rhythm, you don't really need to. Any thoughts on strumming? What would you tell this person how to change his strumming up from, what he was doing on acoustic to what he's doing on electric?
I guess with strumming, I've run into a lot of people who like to use sort of the same strum, and probably it's not a huge deal, but I've always encouraged people and like students to master different types of strums, listen to the types of styles that you're playing. I mean, it all depends on the song, but with rhythm, I really think that it's just holding down the groove and not getting outside of that, not getting too crazy. I prefer when I'm playing rhythm, I don't really bite in with my pick as much. It's not as firm. I kind of let it loose a little bit. So it's kind of more jangly, and you can kind of hear the syncopation of the strum, but not so that it's just like super in your face.
Yeah, and I'd say for strumming on an acoustic, you can get away with more down, down, up, down, like, a lot of up and down percussive stuff, but on an electric, it just sounds annoying. So I would say simplify your strumming for sure. Like, do more straight eighth notes, or open, like just on the chord change, just strum it out, strum out on each chord change. Like basically simplify. Try palm muting a lot for the verses. So one of the things I'll do is like in my strumming on my electric, as opposed to my acoustic, I'll straighten it out a bit. I won't do all the up and down in between percussive stuff. I'll kind of just like do straight eighths with the palm mute, maybe like up higher on the neck for the verses. And then when the chorus comes in, I'll just like open up and go down to the one position and just strum like a whole note for each chord change, and let the drums carry out the subdivisions of the beats and stuff. So I don't know, any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, it sounds really simple, but don't underestimate the power of that one strum. If you've got some nice tone, that's really going to go a long way in sounding really, really nice in your mix. And you're right, I'd say, in a sentence, I would just say, don't try to strum your electric guitar like you do your acoustic guitar. It's pretty much that simple. I can't think of any song I personally do that with, because there's only so many subdivisions in your measure, and depending on what your drums are doing. And then if you're leading from electric, but you also have someone else who's playing acoustic guitar, this is really not necessary. So Yeah, I go back and forth, like you, Sam, between using a pick and using my fingers, playing electric guitar quite a bit. And I do a lot of like picking work as a rhythm electric player. So I'm not doing like a down up strum pattern very often. Usually I'm doing, picking notes within a chord to make it just kind of like more melodic and musical sounding. And we'll get into chord voicings in a minute, but if you do some inversions or some voicings that are higher up on the neck or on some of the higher strings, you can kind of almost sound like a lead guitar player without really even doing too much, just picking within the chord voicings. And then if you do, a lot of what I'll do is with finger picking is it may be a finger picking pattern, or it may just be like plucking 2 or 3 of the strings at a time as I'm moving between positions, and then with a little bit of delay, that's going to ring out and sound really nice usually.
Yeah, you really want to avoid like open chord strings. I really like that. You're picking out a little pattern, a picking pattern in the chord voicing, and kind of adding this melodic element, because you just can't play the electric like an acoustic. It sounds bad. So that's really good. Let's talk a little bit about chord shapes then. So one of the things I think is like, don't just strum in the one position on the neck, like open G, regular D. Like there's a lot more creative shapes you can use when you're playing on an electric. So maybe Brenton, you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. So I'd say the first thing to do is get really comfortable and confident in your bar chord theory. So knowing and understanding first where your root 6 and root 5 bar chords are, and maybe start with those, and then not even playing all 6 or 5 strings on those chords, but playing combinations of strings. They can be sequential strings, so like 3 strings in a row, so like your D and your G and your B string all in a row, like in an F shape or something like that, like up higher on the neck. Or they can be out of sequence, so you could do like for a D chord, your root on the D note, and then skip the D string altogether and just play the next 2 notes on the B and the G string or something like that. Because like within a root 6 bar chord shape, there are like 7 or 8 pretty quickly identifiable chord voicing combinations without moving anywhere. You could play the bottom 2 strings, you could play the next 2, you could play all 3, you could skip some strings. And so if you start there and then find some nice voicings within that shape, and then arpeggiate those voicings, or find a picking pattern within them, you're going to get some really nice melodic, interesting sounding chords that you can utilize way up the neck and down the neck by only learning 2 shapes, basically your movable E shape, which is your root 6 bar chord, or your movable A shape, which is your root 5. And then if you want to take it kind of a little bit further, there's of course root 4 and root 3 shapes, which are basically like triad shapes, which sound really nice up the neck too.
That's good. Sam, any thoughts?
Yeah, stay away from open chords. The only time I think I've ever played one position open chords, like an open G would be, or D and stuff like that, is when I'm strumming just on the downbeat and it's really drivey or something. It's a huge song. And then I guess for when I'm leading rhythm, I do typically stick to the 4th position bar chord triad shape, because there's a ton of just major key or major scale stuff that you can do in there with your picking and when you move a little bit of fingers. So yeah, getting the theory behind all of the the cage stuff is I think a huge part of playing electric guitar and leading at the same time.
Yeah, and just to encourage our listeners, because if you're like, oh my gosh, they're like speaking a different language, well, 1, let it kind of spur you on to learn some of these things, but 2, also like for me, it also sounds slightly like a different language, what some of the phrases that Brenton and Sam are talking about, because I play a lot by ear and I know exactly what they're saying, and I've learned it by ear, but that's just because I've been doing it for a while and like I'm comfortable with it. But what they're really saying is like, get comfortable all the way around the neck of your guitar. Like know how to play an E in the 1 position, know how to play it up on the 7th fret, and then know how to play it up in a triad on the top 3 strings, so that you can jump in between all those 3 spots for a verse and a chorus, so like just for an example, like I might do like, let's just say I'm doing This Is Amazing Grace in E. I might just do like a palm muted open E string type thing for the verses, and then in the chorus I might jump up to just all the way up to the 7th fret, E open, like just play the bottom 3 or 4 strings on the E, open E chord. And then when I go to the 4 chord, which is the A, I'll just lower my pointer finger down to the next thing and hit the open A string and ring the bottom 3 out. And then I might jump up higher and do like a little D-shaped triad thing up higher. So if you can get comfortable with maybe those 3 positions, you're going to be really versatile in adding energy to the song. Like I even led a men's retreat last weekend, and it was, for the most part, it was almost a 3-piece, and it was with me on my electric. So I had to create the energy changes by knowing how to move around the neck of my guitar. So really it kind of all boils down to what they said at the beginning, which is practice and get comfortable. And then in terms of mixing, I'll answer that real quickly. You might want to look at compressing your guitars, your electric guitars, like maybe 2-to-1 ratio compression or maybe 3-to-1 ratio compression, just so that the peaks don't stick too far out of the mix. And then also like maybe roll off some of the bottom end, like high pass up to, I don't know, 120, 180. I'm not a real sound guy, but just get some of the low end rumble out of the microphone by high passing. And then if you have capability to pan, you can pan left a little bit on your rhythm and right a little bit on your lead guitar, just to, create some separation in the room between the 2 guitars. So that's a little bit about mixing. Any final thoughts, guys, for Rick and for any of the other listeners who are wanting to switch to an electric?
Yeah, I just say, like, if you have a chance to play electric on a team or with a group somewhere where you're not leading, like, take advantage of that, and that just comes back to what I said at the beginning, which is just get really comfortable and really strong on whatever level of playing that you're hoping to achieve. Again, you don't have to be the best player in the world, but try to seek out opportunities for you to practice with other people, because that's just going to translate all the better when you're actually singing and leading.
Cool. Sam, anything you think we missed maybe that would be helpful?
The one thing that I can think of is a good resource that I like. If you can, multitracks.com. I don't know how many people use tracks, but you can isolate other artists, specifically in worship, their mixes. And so you can isolate a guitar and you can hear what that guitar is doing on that track. And they might have 6 guitars, which is just for the record or whatnot, but you can, see which one plays a more important role, all that kind of stuff. I learned guitar listening, and looking at books and the different chord shape stuff. So I really do think that there's nothing better than your ear. So like all the skill stuff and the learning the cage and stuff like that, a lot of it comes out when you pick up stuff in different songs. You figure out how to play it. It leads to other things. So
awesome. Great, guys. Thank you so much for your wisdom. And for our listeners, again, if you have a question you would like us to answer in a kind of like real world worship leader setting with other real world worship leaders, like shoot me an email, alex@worshipleadertraining.com, or call and leave a voicemail, 831-607-WLT1. And I'll put the links again in the show notes. Thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
And God bless you.